All right, it is officially noon, so let's go ahead and jump in and get started here. We have Alexander Gaeta Troutner and Jillian Morley from the Career Design Center joining us today, and we appreciate all of you tuning in for our Staff Employee Association Development Seminar for the month of September. We're going to be discussing job postings demystified. I'm excited about this topic and what Alexander and Jillian have in store for us. So I will give them a brief introduction, and then I will turn the time over to them. I'll keep an eye on the chat if you guys have any questions, and then we should have about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for a Q&A session as well. So Jillian joined USU in 2016 in what was then Career Services and is now the Career Design Center. She's the assistant director and a career design specialist. Jillian's background includes internships in various career centers at the University of Utah, as well as Arizona State University. And helping individuals work towards their career goals is very rewarding for her, and she always enjoys hearing the career paths of the amazing staff at USU. Alexander is the career specialist for engineering majors at Utah State. And prior to graduate school, Alexander worked as a forensic scientist and counterterrorism analyst, which sounds pretty awesome, by the way. He did his master's at the University of Nevada, Reno, which as a fellow Mountain West school, we won't hold against him. And then he transitioned into career education in 2020. Alexander has taught career readiness at both the high school and collegiate levels, and is especially passionate about helping students effectively market themselves to their target industries. And with that, I will turn the time over to Alexander and Jillian.
Sorry, thought I had already logged on. Here we go.
Thank you, Tim. We'll just take a second here to get this all going.
No problem.
Hey, if all the participants want to participate in some polls we have, you can use the website and the access code here on the screen. You can use your computer or phone. Either one works great. So once you do that, it'll give you a question, and we would love to have you practice using the poll that we'll use through the presentation. So you can go ahead and practice the question that pops up on your screen. And I'll put the information in the chat box so you can keep hopping on while I show the title slide for you. Hey, Xander, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so thank you everyone for being here today. So the title of today's presentation is Job Postings Demystified, Mastering the Art of Understanding Employer Needs. So we're going to be talking, the topic's pretty on the nose, or the title's pretty on the nose as to what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be breaking down professional job descriptions today, different types of postings, be it requisitions, things on job boards, and so on, and just kind of talk about how you can both understand what it is that employers are asking for in a job description, and then how you can address the different things that they ask for in a job description, both in your own kind of personal self-marketing, as well as how you might network effectively using the different things that they ask for, how you might address things in a job description on, say, a resume or a cover letter. So this is one part of several different presentations that the Career Design Center is giving over fall 2023. If you were able to tune in last month, Dan and Loveland and Rachel Hollingsworth gave a resume and cover letters presentation. I believe that is up on YouTube right now. Tim would have to confirm that for me. I'm seeing a nodding head, so yeah, that's up on YouTube right now. And then we have today's presentation, which is about understanding job descriptions. And then in October, two of our other assistant directors, Joseph Banks and Marissa Armitstead, are going to be presenting on professional networking. So today we're going to be using this Pear Deck software in order to, or the app in order to kind of interact with this presentation. So you were able to test that out just a moment ago with talking about how you're feeling, but now I want you to kind of interact more directly with the topic at hand. So the first question that I have for all of you before we get started is, what percentage of jobs do you believe are posted publicly, namely posted online? So to kind of clarify that, of all the jobs that exist in America that people interview for and get and, you know, are hired for, what percentage of all jobs do you think are advertised publicly? So this would be on public job boards like Indeed, LinkedIn, company websites, things like that. Okay, seeing a nice distribution here, spread across the board. Okay. All right, Jillian, are you able to reveal the real answer, or do I just tell them?
Go ahead and just tell them.
Okay, so the answer to this question is 30%. 70% of all jobs that exist, at least in the US, are either advertised internally or are filled through networking. This can be both personal networks, such as like, you know, your own LinkedIn, or through corporate networking events like the career fairs that our office puts on at USU. Regardless, it's a really good idea to know where exactly a company is actively hiring from. So in the case of Utah State University, all professional salary jobs are advertised through the iCIMS portal, as I'm sure everyone here is well aware, whereas, say, most part-time student jobs are posted to Handshake. It's a really good idea to understand where companies are specifically hiring from, because if you apply in the wrong place, then your resume, for example, may not ever actually make it to a hiring manager. So it's a really good idea just to be familiar with that. I will say, and this is something that Joseph and Marissa will talk about a lot more next month, but a great way to start networking professionally for target roles that you have is to reach out to departments and hiring managers in your target roles and ask them where you need to apply for roles or what you can do in order to be an effective candidate for their open roles. It's kind of a tactic to get started on professional networking in your target industry. Okay.
So we want to talk about with job postings. It's good to be thinking about, especially as you want to grow your career here at Utah State, or if you do look elsewhere, how do you really understand the job description and break it down into what is most important? So oftentimes we'll see what is referred to as the super job description syndrome. And basically, this is when a posting lists everything the previous person did, all of the things the managers wanted that previous person to do as well, and then everything they hope for in this new candidate. So it's kind of like this unrealistic description, and the company hopes for the best. Like, hopefully we'll get a candidate that can fill all of these requests that we have, all of these responsibilities we want them to do. And oftentimes that candidate just doesn't exist. Oftentimes it can just be unrealistic of what is expected. So we always talk about the general rule of thumb. When you feel like you can do the job, if you meet 60% of the qualifications, apply anyway. Where we do see a lot of those descriptions is that super job. We want you to apply anyway, because you want to show how you can fill that role. And even if you don't have all of the skills, showing that you have the growth mindset, the capabilities to learn the new skills, all of the transferable skills, show how you are a really good candidate, even if you're not meeting 100% of their requests. And as Xander and I were looking at different resources, we saw 60% is the typical number people recommend in the industries. So when you're looking at a posting, kind of make it like a checklist and see what percent of these do I meet. And if you feel confident that you could do it and you meet 60% of those, go ahead and apply. And then there's also a couple of things that you'll often see Oh, good question. Does that apply to education as well? Yeah. Like if you feel tell me if I'm misunderstanding the question, but oftentimes in descriptions, we'll see applicant needs to have a bachelor's degree in XYZ or related field. If you feel that your education is related enough, that's great. The same applies to if the job description lists that you need X number of years of experience. If you think your experience from while you were in school is applicable, you can count that as part of your years of experience. So there's no like black and white of this is what it has to be. It's more of how does this fit in with my experience, and do I feel like I could do a good job in that role? So yeah, let me know if that did not answer the question there. So along with these super job syndromes, we see imposter syndrome too. And I think everyone at some point will feel the imposter syndrome, whether it's in your career or other parts of your life. And that imposter syndrome can hold you back from applying to certain jobs that you might be really good at. You might be doubting your accomplishments. You might be doubting like how you would compare to other candidates. You might have low self-esteem. You might not be sure if your education or years of experience really qualify for that. So when you have that imposter syndrome feeling, different ways we recommend to overcome that would be, again, if you meet that 60%, apply anyway. The worst that'll happen is that you don't hear back, but at least you gave yourself that chance and put your hat in the ring. We also recommend keeping a wins folder. So anytime that you have good accomplishments, track those professional achievements and organize that. So when it's time to apply to jobs, you feel more confident, and it's helpful when you have to update your resume or update your LinkedIn profile. We always recommend update it regularly so you never have to feel overwhelmed when you need to update it quickly. Hopefully you can update it continually. And even having your LinkedIn profile like your wins folder so that you can keep it there. Other like as companies are on there, they can see it, or as you're networking, other people can see it too. We also recommend having some achievable goals. So we'll talk about some career readiness competencies in a minute, but having a goal around wanting to develop a specific skill set. So for example, if you're looking at jobs here at Utah State and there's a certain type of job you want, look at what kind of skills are really needed in that position and see which ones you can start working on now and set yourself some goals around those skill sets. There's so many ways we can develop those skills, whether it's LinkedIn learning classes, you know, all kinds of formal and informal methods there. And like Alexander was saying, next month we'll have a workshop on networking, but that's the other part of overcoming the imposter syndrome. Just keep connecting with people, because that truly is one of the best ways to progress your career and get those opportunities that are in that hidden job market. So we also wanted to cover what is in a Utah State University job description. All of the postings on the iCIMS portal have these sections, and all of them are really important to review. So anytime you're looking at positions on campus or within the university, be sure to really read through these. You can get a lot of information out of a job description. And one of my favorite things about the job descriptions at Utah State, for most of for all of the hiring committees I've been on, we spend a lot of time writing the job description to make sure it feels accurate. Someone that knows the job is helping to write that description. And that's not true in every company, like outside of Utah State University. Sometimes people who are not closely involved with the job are writing the descriptions, so it might not give the best representation of what that job will be about. So I love that about at least my experience of the hiring committees I've been on, is like we're really involved with those postings. So you'll have the overview, the responsibilities, the qualifications, and so on. You can see that list on there. And there's a good question in the chat box about salary. Is there a reason that not all of them list a specific advertised salary or salary range? I feel like it's department to department. We, in the Career Design Center, we really value the transparency of listing the salary. We want students or staff, like anytime you're applying to a job, we want you to know what the salary range is. So then you know if it's a realistic opportunity for you. Because if you have a salary range in mind and the job you apply to doesn't list it, and their salary range is actually way lower, then they're wasting time on both sides. They're wasting your time, they're wasting their own time. So it's always better if job descriptions do have the salary listed. Like I said, departments might have different reasoning behind why they list it or not, but hopefully more and more will be listing it just to be more transparent. Alexander, do you have anything else to add to? Okay, good. Xander just put in a statement in the chat box too. So he said, Utah is not a state that requires to list that salary. So that's up to the discretion of the company or the department. So, and we really do encourage it just to be fully transparent. So, one of the principles too we really like to think about as you're looking at job descriptions is, it seems kind of backwards, but it's fit in before you stand out. And so what do I mean by that? So we want you to fit in by really paying attention to the skills, the keywords that are listed in the job description. So as you're working on your resume or cover letter, or even like you're interviewing, you can bring in those keywords from the job description to show how you are a good fit. You can make yourself stand out in other ways at this point, like having a super sharp resume, or like when you're in the interviewing stages, having really great interviewing skills and confidence. But in terms of fitting in, you want to show that you're a good fit. You want to show you have that good match and skill set. The other way to help you stand out when you go into interviews or networking situations, having like a clean, fresh copy of your resume, that can always make a great impression too. So let's see here. Let me make sure I covered all of the points I wanted to on this. Oh, the other part I wanted to talk about with this one was when you're reviewing the job description, you want to think critically about how will this role fit with you, not just your career path, but your life as well. You want to think about what is most important to you, what do you value? So for example, I know like in just the workforce in general, after the pandemic, when a lot of companies and universities were having people go back to working in person, some organizations came up with a lot of like telework policies or different schedule kinds of things. So if you look at a job posting and if you really value like a flexible schedule or having some remote days, making sure that the job would fit in with your own lifestyle and your own values. If you have to do a long commute every day, does that take away from something like family time that you value? So this is usually a good point to really be thinking of those priorities before you apply. And if any of them, you want to think of what the deal breakers are. So then you can decide if you apply or not. And if you do apply, are those things that are appropriate to bring up in an interview or a second interview? So really weighing your values at this point is helpful.
Great. So once you've taken time to kind of understand a job description and how it relates to you sort of personally, then that's a good time to think about how your professional background and skills translate to what it is that a hiring manager is asking for. Before I get into the competencies, I do want to give a bit of a disclaimer or iterate that experience does not have to be directly related in order to be relevant. Drawing direct connections between your education, your skills, experiences, and what the job description is asking for is great. But think about how your other roles translate into these different competencies that they're looking for. An example I like to use with students is that I used to work in emergency medicine, as was mentioned, before changing industries and moving into a high school counseling office. So while my previous experience might not have been directly related to high school counseling, the skills of public communication, public-facing professionalism, stress tolerance, and de-escalating others was very highly valued in that space. So those were the things that I focused on in order to translate my quote-unquote unrelated experience into professionally relevant experience. So on that note, the different career competencies that you see in front of you have been identified by the National Association of Colleges and Employers to be the top kind of professional skills that employers are looking for. So I would like to highly encourage you to go through different job descriptions that you see and find what key competencies that employer is asking for, and then identify where your experiences translate to what that job description is looking for, and then tailor/contextualize your resume to those as much as you can. You know, you're going to want to contextualize these competencies within your experiences, because it's better to show how your kind of soft skills have been, how your soft skills have been leveraged in the past than it is to just kind of tell people that you have these, like in a bullet point list. It's always a good idea to kind of ground them within the bullet points of your resume than it is to just kind of list them off. So on that note, I have a question for all of you that you can respond to. Of these competencies, which ones would you like to spend more time developing as professional staff at USU? Okay, we've got some results rolling in.
And this is great to see because there are so many resources like professional development through the SEA, LinkedIn Learning, different like volunteer opportunities, a lot of different ways even within the USU community where you can work on further developing some of these skills. And if you're not sure where or how to develop these skills, you can reach out to us and we can brainstorm with you and help you out too. So, awesome. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. So we want to have you practice something. If you missed the resume workshop last month, we want to pull one piece of it from piece of that to today. This is always such an important part of the job search process. Writing success statements for your resume, but using the job description to influence those success statements. So like we talked about, it's really important to pull the key words from the job description and see what skills do they really want to know about. Then in your own success statements, highlight those skills. So on your resume, you should have your experiences listed out with bullet points under them to show your accomplishments from each of your roles. We refer to those as success statements, and we like to use this simple formula to help you write them. So you always start with a strong action verb, then highlight what your responsibility was, and then the outcome, that accomplishment, what was the purpose or the result of what you did. So as I go through these samples, I want you to be thinking about your current job and think about one of your most recent or one of your favorite accomplishments. And then we're going to take a couple of minutes and have you practice writing one of these that you could put on your own resume. So if we break these into those formulas, so your action verb would be like supervised, manage, build and maintain. And then the responsibility part. So we'll just look at that first bullet point. Supervised 3 student employees using strengths-based approach, and then that purpose to create effective and engaging workplace environment. So if you have any supervisory roles, maybe think about how do you specifically supervise the people underneath you? What kind of communication do you use? Or what kind of, what approach do you use when you supervise? Another example could be managed receipts and travel forms with high attention to detail in ServiceNow, ensuring 100% accuracy and adherence to policy. So you can also mention numbers. Anytime you can quantify is always really helpful. And then mentioning any tools or technology, especially if it's a tool or technology that you would be using in that new position. So things here at Utah State like ServiceNow or Banner or Canvas or Zoom, those are all great to mention because the university community knows what that means, and you'll have to continue to use those. And then one more, build and maintain strong relationships with campus partners, increasing event collaboration and student engagement by 30%. So with these examples, I would love for you to take a couple of minutes and try writing 1 or 2 bullet points about your own experiences in your current job. And feel free, if you want to put them in the chat box, go ahead and do that. Xander and I can give you any feedback we see, or if you just want to, I don't know, put questions in too, and feel free to unmute yourself. So we'll give you a couple of minutes to work on that. And while you're working on that, one of my favorite tips as you're looking at job descriptions, I always recommend print off the job description and go through and highlight the skills and keywords that you want to make sure you incorporate. Then as you're working on your bullet points, just scribble them out. So it becomes like a really great way to visualize what am I still missing. Even if there's a job here at Utah State that you might want down the road, do that and go through and see what skills do I have already, which ones do I still need to develop. And that can be a great way to help you set some goals around what competencies you want to develop.
Yeah, just to throw in something that I really enjoy about success statements, or really any other kind of effective method of self-marketing, is that it does a lot to mitigate some of the anxieties that people have about marketing themselves. I know, at least when I meet with students, a lot of them are worried about presenting accurate information, or maybe they're worried about coming across as arrogant or even trying to communicate that they're humble or something like that. That's not what the bullet points in your resume are supposed to do. They're meant to communicate the lived reality of your experiences in a way that's going to resonate with your target audience. And so focusing on things like skills, responsibilities, quantifiable outcomes, that's the lived reality of those experiences. And so it can really help alleviate some of that anxiety about how you might feel that you're coming across by using these types of structures to market yourself.
One more thing too that we've been looking into a bit more is Chat GPT and how you can utilize AI and Chat GPT on resumes. One of the things that we recommend is, you can use it, right? Like plug into Chat GPT, like the bullet point you currently have, and let the computer program know, like, I want this to sound better or whatever. Then you see what it comes up with, and then you adapt it. You do not copy and paste it and plug that onto your resume, but you take it and adapt it so it sounds like you, it sounds authentic to your experience. But that's been a really cool tool to watch to see how it can help students and staff feel more confident about the way they're wording on their resume. So, okay, but yeah, it should be another seminar. It is changing the way people are applying for jobs. So we're gonna move on, but feel free still, if you have questions or ideas, put them in the chat box, but we want to quiz you a little bit now.
Hey, so heading back onto Pear Deck on your phones or computers. Now that we've talked about some examples of good success statements, I would like to get opinions from the crowd. So starting out, would you all say that this is a good success statement? So the statement is, worked on a team to plan events for new students. Would you agree, disagree, somewhere in the middle? Okay, seeing a lot of disagreement going on here. Okay, so let's flesh that out a little more. How about this statement?
Oh, okay, going forward, sorry.
Okay. Collaborated on, we'll say, a team to plan events for 2,000 students. Okay, how does everyone feel about this one? All right, we're getting a lot more in the middle, a pretty even distribution across the board. Okay, so we've got one more to get your thoughts on. So the next statement is collaborated on a team of 10 while using strong organizational and communication skills, resulting in community building event for 2,000 new students. How do we feel about this one? All right, a lot more agreement. Yeah, it really is identifying what it is that a job description is looking for, trying to discern what your target audience, namely that department head, hiring manager, recruiter, whoever it might be, is kind of seeking in an applicant, and then tailoring your self-marketing through, say, a resume or a cover letter, or even emails that you have with these individuals. To what they're looking for by leveraging the skills you've used, the responsibilities that you've had in the past, and the outcomes or results related to your work. So yes, I would agree with all of you. This last one is a much better success statement than, say, the first one that we saw. The first one was a lot more kind of job description-y, whereas this one actually communicates kind of substance that they would be looking for. Cool. So we just kind of did this. So if we want to skip ahead of this one, Jillian. But yeah, as you're thinking about applying to jobs, I would still encourage all of you to, again, look at the job description and really think about ways that you can kind of tailor your documents directly to what it is that they're looking for, so that you can fit in while also leveraging everything else that you have to stand out from other candidates.
And we really wanted to, actually, I'm going to hide the responses. We have a few resources up here that you can utilize as staff members. First, we have a Career Champions newsletter we send out occasionally with some good content around career development and how our office can support you. But then also we have career tutorials, which is a Canvas class where you can enroll as a student. It's, like not credit bearing or anything, but it's basically modules on how to write resumes, how to do cover letters, how to negotiate a salary, things like that. And then we have sample resumes and cover letters too. But we wanted to make sure to leave a good chunk of time to answer any questions you have. Because we know that looking at job descriptions, thinking about applying to jobs, there's so many different layers with it. So we wanted to make sure there's time for conversation. So we are totally fine if you unmute and ask questions, and we'll give the time to you all. Yeah, and feel free to keep adding your takeaway, your big takeaway from today's session.
I'll jump in with my question. I'm not sure if my thoughts fully formed, but I'll give it a shot. So I'm trying to get into the public relations industry, and a lot of those like entry-level positions, those positions wear a lot of hats, and I get kind of overwhelmed with like finding those specific keywords. Is ChatGPT a good tool to kind of pull out like a handful of those keywords, or no?
That's a good question. So I read an article recently where it talked about with ChatGPT, you can put in your resume and a job description, and it helps merge the two. So it tries to help pull out. I think it can be, you have to put in some really good prompts for it, right? But that could be a way to help you see like what does overlap, like where could I plug in some more of these skills it's asking for. So that might be worth trying. I'll try to find the article quickly and put it in the chat box.
Yeah, sometimes the fluff and the HR disclaimers and the legalese and job descriptions can get very overwhelming. They're very necessary for legal protections and communicating, kind of what people aren't getting out of a position. But different tools, whether that's ChatGPT, even things like LinkedIn Premium's keyword tool that exists, even if it's just talking to another human being, like someone in our office who looks at, job descriptions for a living, can be really directionally helpful to pull out kind of the the essence of a job description that actually relates to you as the candidate. The job descriptions are very understandably sometimes massive and overwhelming at times. And so it can be helpful to use those tools not as necessarily a way to 100% write your resume and apply to that job, for example, but to pull out like, hey, this is what they're asking for of the candidate versus this is all of the other, kind of copy paste from the organization that has to be put in there.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Mhm.
Question, thanks. Other questions from people?
We have one about federal job descriptions in the chat. I can answer that one if you'd like, because this is kind of in line with my area. So yeah, federal job descriptions are definitely a little different than what you would see even from, say, state organizations like Utah State University. Just kind of some directional insight on how federal hiring happens. Basically, when you're applying to a federal department, they will take that requisition, which is what they call job descriptions at the federal level, and they'll almost put like a box next to every single qualification line on the job description, and they will basically use that as a checklist to vet different applicants that they get. So they'll look at the different materials that they have received from you, resume, cover letter, transcript, whatever it is that, veteran release, like whatever it is that they ask from you, and they'll compare it to the different requirements that they have for, say, different GS levels, for example, which are the different pay grades at the federal level. So I'm kind of being a bit rambly here, but what I'm trying to say is that with federal applications, you are actually able to submit really long documents to those jobs without it working actively against you. So you can submit, say, a multi-page resume or a really long cover letter that addresses literally every single thing that they ask for in the job description or requisition, and that's going to do you the most favors for applying to federal jobs. In the private sector, or really most other industries, you want to create a document that is still easy to kind of skim and easily understand how your education skills and experiences relate to the job that you're applying to, because real human beings like us are not going to be spending an hour reading through every single resume that comes across our table. So you do want to be strategic in how long, say, your resume is, for example. But with the federal infrastructure, I would say try to address every single thing that they ask for that you can, because they are going to be looking for kind of a minimum percentage of match between candidates and the requisition that they post.
And I am not finding that article that I saw about the resume. But Bobby, if I find it, I'll send it to you. Okay. Other questions from anyone?
This might be getting too far into the weeds, but I'm curious if you guys have seen any commonalities in job postings that kind of showcase different things that people are looking for, whether that's maybe by the way this is worded, you can kind of tell that this is a new position or a position where the leadership doesn't have a lot of direction, or things that you may not know, but like could be giving away that this is replacing someone that's been there for a long time, or retirement versus somebody moving on, and how that impacts the hiring process. Some of those commonality issues that you don't maybe necessarily think of, but that you can see between the lines in those job postings.
Yeah, kind of like the super job syndrome. Like you have to almost learn how to read between the lines with it. So some of the tips around that, if the responsibility seems super vague, that could be an indication that it's a new position and they don't fully know what the job will be like. Or if they're incredibly detailed responsibilities, that might be they're replacing someone and they want the new person to do just as good as that person, take on even more, and be the best ever, right? So something you can do though is have that job description pulled up. Let's just say it's academic advisor. Pull up an academic advisor description for other institutions, see how it compares, if it seems kind of similar, that could be a good indication that it's like a pretty like a good level to be at. But if it seems way different on one end or the other, that might be an indication that it's either like a new position or someone is retiring. But those are great questions too. You can ask in an interview. You can ask them, is this a new position? Or if it is replacing someone, what were some of the qualities you liked best about that person? So you can do a little bit of that digging in the interview too. Great question, Tim. Other questions? Okay, we've got one in the chat. I think that's a good question. And Alexander, feel free to jump in. But I think when you're looking at the qualifications, and hopefully if the salary is listed, you can also compare to other job postings out there of like, okay, are the qualifications similar and is the pay scale similar? But if it's like, we need someone with a PhD and we'll pay you $30,000, red flag, right? You want to really think about, are the qualifications in line with how much the salary is listed for? If it's listed, hopefully it is. One thing you can also do, it kind of goes into the networking that you'll learn about next month too. But I always recommend, if you're interested in applying for a job, think of a couple of questions that you could ask before you apply. You can contact that department, say you have a couple of questions. Oftentimes they'll let you just go right to the committee chair and you can ask a couple of questions like, oh, I can't even think of an example off the top of my head. Maybe Alexander can think of one, but that could be a helpful way to network, but also get some ideas of what the committee is really looking for. So, can you think of an idea, Alexander? I'm just drawing a blank.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little tangential, but just something that I say to students a lot, because I do have a lot of, undergraduate seniors that come into my office and say, hey, I keep applying for jobs that say entry level online, but then they ask for 3 to 5 years of engineering experience. Like, what do I do? How do I find entry level jobs that are actually entry level? And I kind of have 2 pieces of advice with that. The first is to really, again, like we talked about earlier, understand where companies are actually hiring from so that you can meet opportunities where they are at in a more effective way. One of the best things, and this is going to be less relevant to this crowd, but might be kind of directionally helpful insight. One of the best things about on-campus recruiting events, say at USU, is that you know for an absolute fact that if a company is spending time, money, and human resources in order to physically get themselves to Logan, Utah to recruit college students, that they're probably actually hiring college students and aren't just saying entry level, but then looking for, an alumni 5 years out. So really seeing like where the companies are actually putting their recruiting efforts can be some good kind of directional insight. If they're only applying to, these professional membership executive job listing boards, then they might not be looking for entry-level employees. But if they are dedicating a lot of time to physically going to spaces where, early level, career professionals are at, then they're probably looking for people in those positions. So it's kind of a directional tangent, but I think that insight has been helpful for a lot of people who do worry about job descriptions being vague about what kind of level of professional that they're looking for.
And in the chat box, I put a link for job title, salary grades, and job descriptions. So if you're applying to a job here at Utah State, you can see all of the different job titles and the grade. There's a salary grade table. So for example, if the salary grade is an E, you know what the salary range would be for that job. So that's kind of a great way to help you like look ahead to of how you can grow in a position, what you could imagine like the salary range to be, especially if it's not listed. But for USU specifically, this is a really great page. Not every company has this kind of information public though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the USU one in particular is really good because you can look up those direct job titles and get an actual number. Places like Glassdoor or even the state reporting system are great insights for the industry, but they're often wrong. Like mine said that I made $47 last year, which was not true. So, going to the actual like HR listings for salary grade can be really helpful.
Okay. Another question, is it appropriate to ask the committee or committee chair what the banner position will be before applying to the job? I don't know if I'm understanding the question, like, just kind of like understanding if something will be posted, or can you clarify that, Connie? Oh, okay. Oh, I think so. Maybe someone from HR can chime in on the chat box too, but I think that would be appropriate to ask the committee chair. I know there's a few people from HR in here, so we'll see what they say in the chat box too. But in the meantime, other questions we can answer. Oh, good examples, Joe. Thank you. Okay. Yep. And Garrett said that the HR Solution Center can get you the banner title and salary grade. Perfect. Okay. Great.
Well, I'll chime in again. I've got more questions to keep this going. I think from a lot of questions that we get, both that I've seen in this seminar and other ones, and just conversations with folks, it is that frustration that a lot of times salary isn't listed. And I know that parts of hiring committees that I've been on, sometimes that's frustrating because you get great candidates and review, and then you tell them the salary, and they're like, oh, that's not what I was expecting. And I'm no longer interested. So I feel like maybe that's starting to change, or there's more of a push to be more transparent with that. I was curious, just for general knowledge, are you guys seeing that on your end? Is that actually changing to be more transparent with salary? And then kind of going back to my previous question, I suspect a decent amount of this group are kind of in either entry level looking to move up, or middle level looking to move up. And I think especially in entry level jobs, you see that salary not posted a lot because they're looking for someone to come in and do a super job, and they don't want to be forthcoming right away with that super job is going to pay $35,000 a year or something. And so are there specific things in a job posting that you can look for in how things are worded, or things like that allude to this is an entry level position and it's going to have an entry level salary?
Yeah, I can start with the first part of the question, just about like how are we seeing trends change? We are. One, on the legal front, we are seeing states like California and New York requiring all job listings to list salary. Of course, I'm sure a lot of you have also seen, screenshots of job descriptions in like New York City where it says salary range $5 a year to $500,000 a year. So it's not perfect, but there is a legal precedent that is slowly but surely being set that is permeating its way across the country. So that is something that we've seen. This is kind of tied to what we've also been seeing with different legal and organizational policy precedents being set that are actively antagonizing like unpaid internships, for example, or any type of like kind of unpaid labor. So we are seeing trends moving in the direction of pay transparency, making sure that all forms of work are paid in some capacity. As well as some pretty decent research that comes out every year that suggests that people will apply to jobs when they know the salary range a lot, or they're a lot more likely to apply to jobs when they actually know the number. There are a lot of people who would be willing to work, at what would be considered relatively low salaries because it's in a certain industry or because it makes a specific type of impact. I mean, we all work in higher ed, so like I can assume that there are people here who resonate with that, so it is definitely a shift that we've been seeing, and especially too where, like Jillian mentioned earlier, it is wasting both the hiring manager's time and the job applicant's time for them to get, to the interview stage or even to the offer stage, and then find out, oh, I literally can't pay my bills or live where I live with this salary. Sorry, I can't accept the job. That's a waste of everybody's time. So we are seeing a shift that's been going on. Jillian, do you want to address the kind of what you can look for to see if a job is actually entry level or kind of where it might be?
Yeah, so one of the things you can look at is with the job title. For example, if it says like level 1, 2, or 3, like office assistant 1, office assistant 2, like that indicates that there's growth level there. But then also if it says even like assistant senior or assistant junior, like those words can help you indicate if it's like entry level or not. And then if there's any bullet points in the description that say that like you will be supervised by blank or you will supervise blank, that helps you see if you'll be supervising people or who your supervisor would be. Those can help you kind of see where on the totem pole you are. Okay, good. Okay. All right. Other questions? These have been great questions so far. Okay. Well, if you all think of other questions, we are more than happy to chat with you and give you some guidance and help you out. So please feel free to do so. And thanks again for all of the really good questions and participation.
Excellent. Thank you both for joining us today. And we will get this posted up on the SEA YouTube channel as well, and send it out to all of you that have joined us today. I'll send out a link to this video so you can reference it again, and then be on the lookout. We'll get a date set for our October one, which is going to be all about networking and kind of furthering this look into, professionally developing ourselves and setting ourselves up for, that next job opportunity you might be looking for. So thank you for joining us today, and we hope you join us in the future.